Instead of making an effort to understand our anxiety, we oftentimes choose to shy away from it and attempt to seal it away, essentially treating it like some sort of a monster that's only there to harm us. You see, this thing that many of us fear will harm us is the very thing that's given its all to try to protect us. Anxiety is nothing but a defense mechanism that the mind creates in an attempt to avoid further pain. I like to imagine that the human mind is made up of two parts. Let's name the first part Andrew and the second part Bella, for ease of understanding. Andrew is hopeful and outgoing, always striving to move forward in life. He strives to make new discoveries, strives to experience new things, and essentially tries to improve himself as a person, but whenever he tries to take on a new journey, he often finds himself stuck in a tug-of-war battle with Bella. Now, Bella doesn't quite enjoy the idea of change and doesn't quite fancy the idea of exploring the world either. She instead prefers to stay where she is and to not make a move, because even the smallest movements can lead to terrible consequences. Her primary way of thinking is, why go out there and hope to gain something when the chance of being let down has proven to be much higher, time and time again. She would much prefer if they were to stay where they are, as to not risk the chance of digging themselves down any deeper. Although it's flawed, unfortunately, this is how anxiety chooses to operate. It attempts to protect you through the process of elimination. If you don't confess to your crush, then you won't have to endure the feeling of rejection. And if you don't go to the party, then there's no way in hell you'll be able to embarrass yourself. This sounds pretty ridiculous from an outside perspective, but when it occurs within our own minds, we tend to not realize the irony in it all, because the fear of being vulnerable cripples our ability to make decisions and clouds our judgment. Now, what would happen if Andrew were to ridicule Bella for not wanting to come along with him? If he shunned her for being too weak, being morbid, and being a nuisance to his progression in life? Would that suddenly make Bella snap out of a depressive state and persuade her to agree and tag along for the journey? All of that would only make Bella feel even worse about herself and prompt her to dig herself down even deeper, to the point where Andrew is no longer able to reach her, because if she can't hear him, then she can't be affected by his words. Now, take a step back and try to think of Bella as someone that is a part of your friend group in real life. Let's say that you and your friends were planning on going to a party on the weekend, and everyone seems to be on board with the idea, except for Bella. Bella doesn't feel like going, but encourages everyone else to go without her. When you ask her why she doesn't want to go, she explains that she would be too awkward and would probably only embarrass herself if she were to go. She fears that everyone would think of her as some sort of weird mute that has nothing to add to the fun. Now, I doubt that you'd agree with her, so you would probably try to sit down and talk to her in an attempt to help her out of this depressive mindset, explaining that she really isn't the mute that she thinks she is, and that there really is nothing to fear. I think that I speak for almost everyone when I say that it's much easier to help a friend get through their problems than it is for us to tackle our own. It boils down to us not wanting to be vulnerable, which, as mentioned before, cripples our ability to make decisions and clouds our judgment. I believe that the best way to uncloud your judgment is by treating your anxiety like a person, or even better, treating it as a friend, because after all, your anxiety is you, and you are your closest friend. So, instead of treating your anxiety like a nuisance, try instead to sit down and have a genuine conversation with it. Try to show it that things are not as bad as it has been taught to believe. Try to make it see the positive things that can come out of a new journey and how they can truly outweigh all the negatives. I sometimes try to put myself in uncomfortable situations where I am fully aware that I would be embarrassing myself. For example, I tried messaging people that I've had a falling out with, and if you are one of those people, I hope this helps you because it was made with you in mind. Anyway, I would simply start the conversations with no expectation of rebuilding anything, but instead used it as an opportunity to lessen the tension of my anxiety. I would essentially grab my anxiety by the arm and drag it along with me through this experience as a way to show that, whatever the outcome may be, it will never be as bad as my imagination. If you choose to constantly look away from your insecurities and fears, then they will never go away. All that does is leave them floating around in the air until the wind blows them back into your face on a different day. It can be very difficult to gain the courage for us to bounce back from something like a heartbreak. We often believe that it's impossible for us to trust again because the last person that had our trust chose to break it so easily. If the love and affection that you gave to a person wasn't enough for them to want you, then why would it be enough for anyone else? After all, the person that you initially gave it to was the closest person to you. Our immediate reaction to having our trust betrayed by someone close to us is to lash out and be angry, because after all the times where you stuck by their side, not only did they never return the favors, but they also chose to do the opposite instead, and practically spat in your face. Although this might be your initial response, it usually doesn't stick around for long. If you're not able to move on from the whole situation fast enough, then after a while, you might start to think about where you might have gone wrong, and it can eventually lead to you blaming yourself for the whole situation. So, how can this whole situation be avoided as to not have it spiral out of control? I believe that everything you do it for yourself. Even when you help the people around you, you are essentially doing it for yourself. To put it simply, you wouldn't buy a car for someone that you dislike because there's absolutely nothing to gain from it. Now, if you were to buy a car for your mum or dad instead, you still wouldn't be getting anything from it. Except you actually do. You see, when you help the people that you care about, you don't tend to do it with the notion of having them being indebted to you. You do it because you genuinely enjoy seeing them happy. Whether it's buying your parents a new car or helping a friend get through a tough time, seeing the smile on their faces is the reason you'd go through all that trouble. So, instead of being bitter at the person that broke your trust and didn't return your favors, try to understand why you gave it to them in the first place. You didn't help them in order to have them pay you back at a later date. You helped them because you wanted to see them happy. This concept can be very difficult to live by. I know I certainly struggle with it at times because, of course, you have every right to be disheartened when someone you love betrays your trust. That's just a given. But I do try my best to keep this concept at the back of my head at all times, because even though I may not fully embrace it, having it there gives me the ability to move on before anything spirals out of my control. Everything in our lives happens for a reason, not in the sense that our destiny is predetermined, but in the sense that what you are now is a result of what you have been through. Now, this might seem like an obvious statement, but it also seems that many people fail to fully comprehend it. It's very common for people to let their past taint their present and future. We often like to think that if we never had to endure the pain that we went through, then we would be in a much better position now. Instead of putting an effort into achieving our ideal positions, we choose to believe that it's too late to start now because of this and that. Now, I'm not implying that you shouldn't feel sorry for what has happened or that your pain is not important. I'm simply saying that if you keep talking down to yourself in this manner and not attempt to make a change, then you will never be what you want to be. Not because you can't do it, but because your hate will always find a way to murder your faith. The pain you go through is the greatest key to your success when you choose to see it that way. If you think about your past and try to see the positives in it, then you will begin the process of healing and learning. Every negative mentality that I've mentioned used to define me not too long ago. My life used to be controlled by the fear of outcome because I simply let it control me. I have had near-death experiences as a result of my anxiety. Not too long ago, I ended up in a car accident that could have taken my life. And for a while afterwards, I used to ask, why me? And instead of trying to help myself, I chose to blame the people that hurt me. Although I would never want to relive my pain, I'm certainly glad that it happened. Because if it hadn't happened, then I wouldn't be making this video. I wouldn't have the knowledge that I have today, and I wouldn't be able to help the people around me. I would probably be studying engineering, or rather failing engineering at uni, and being completely miserable because of it. That's what I mean when I say that everything happens for a reason.
Don't you think you're my friend? I'm just sitting, I'm fine. I've been on for a while. I've been smoking and rolling, drinking and driving, thinking about doing it all